What makes a good isekai? I realize that the answer to this question is highly subjective, but I'm going to attempt to answer it anyways. Love it or hate it, it's probably the most populous genre in anime at the moment, so much so that it's not even a matter of just having one isekai show per season. Because there's more than one this season. Far more than one. Heck, I'm only going to be talking about 4, and that's not even all of them. But I had to cut it off somewhere. In my eyes, the isekai formula is quite simple. Take a quirk, or a concept, or something random that makes your story unique and throw that into a generic fantasy world that can still be slightly customized to an extent. And then write about the consequences of these two things colliding. For me, the entertainment value of the show comes from these unique situations that can't happen elsewhere. It still relies on the writers to tell a good story, right? Even if ultimately the concept is just following a formula. And I've always been optimistic about the isekai genre because I remember when a similar formula was used to talk about quirky or random things and attaching it to a group of 4 high school girls. We called it Slice of Life, and I loved it, most of the time. And there's really nothing stopping people from taking those exact same concepts and then just doing it again here. I'm not saying that's what some of them are doing, but it could happen. Half the work could be done for you. And we'd probably have just the same amount of crap. So today, because we're spoiled for choice, we're gonna be looking at some isekai from this season and see if they can follow the formula and also see how well that's going for them. Some are great, while others are... yeah. High school prodigies have it easy in another world. Oh boy. Sometimes I go into this with low expectations because the lengthy light novel titles tell me most of what I need to know about the plot. In this case, the title tells me that we have some smart high school students who get thrown into another world and things are great for them. Question mark? Not much room in the title for there to be any conflict or growth, but maybe that's just what they want us to think. Unfortunately, no. The title is kind of right on the money, except that the series itself is actually quite a bit more exaggerated than the title. See, when I think of a prodigy, I think of a person who is just in the top percentile of academics and who covers topics at an extremely high level for their age. And while technically that is the case for the characters here, they go a bit further than that. These characters are not your average everyday prodigies. They are like advanced prodigies. They are not just experts in various fields compared to their age group. No, these kids are the best in the world in some interesting categories. Like, you have a genius inventor, a doctor, a warrior, but we also have the world's best businessman. Like, that is something that can be easily quantified. And there's also the best magician and best journalist? What? Like, that last one doesn't really matter much because she's also a ninja and that's kind of her thing, but it's just added on to the pile of things to ignore in the name of suspension of disbelief. Our main character is the world's best politician. Another title that's meaningless because you can't actually rank them. But anyway, he takes command of all of the geniuses who end up in this generic fantasy world and they try to get out of it, I think. So at least we're following the formula well enough so far. The quirk is that the series is just full of a cast of geniuses, but there is one interesting problem. They are all the best at what they do, to an almost stupid degree. So what problems can they not solve? What challenges will they face? What difficulties will they encounter? As it turns out, nothing of interest. The problem I have with this series is that it's like watching someone play a role-playing game with cheats turned on. All of the characters have their own get-out-of-problems-free cards just built right into their backstories, and that's just not fun. I am not saying that you can't have almost impossibly smart characters. You just need to still be able to make them entertaining and give them the chance to fail. Senku from Dr. Stone is a good example of this, but the main difference between the two is that Senku is fallible. These characters are not. Senku can still possibly fail in his goals because as smart as he is, he still needs his dumb as a brick friend to remind him that grapes make wine. But all of these prodigies are just too perfect. And perfection is boring. Hard pass. Next up, didn't I say to make my abilities average in the next life? I first brought up this series in my anticipated list because, as with the last series, the title kind of gives the whole plot away. You have a smart girl who gets reincarnated, but wants nothing more than to be normal, to be what she calls average. But as it turns out, the gods have a very different idea on what average is, since while calculating the average, they just decided to not drop the outliers. So our main character ends up being half as powerful as an elder dragon. The quirk, going back to the formula, is girl who wishes to be normal and the circumstances that make her extraordinary. She is dropped into a stereotypical fantasy world where her powers could have her doing a lot of good, but again, she wants nothing to do with it. The show tries to play up the comedy of her desperately trying to act normal and average, while at the same time constantly outperforming everyone by accident. Really, the series is as good as I could have hoped for. What I wanted was a kind of reflection on the overpowered nature of most isekai protagonists by having a main character who desperately wished she wasn't the main character. And while I definitely do wish that this series could have gone further with that, so far the show is exactly what it says on the tin. It just needs to keep shaking things up and not become predictable to a boring degree like the Prodigy series. At the end of the day, this series about a girl who is not average but wishes to be is possibly the most average isekai to come out this season. So really, mission accomplished. Kemono Michi, rise up. Not gonna lie, if you've already seen this series, you can probably figure out why I ended up watching it, right? Because if there's anything in an anime that can get me to watch it for no other reason, it's because of the cute doggo. Oh, he's so cute. But seriously, there's also a banker that looks like me. Kemono Michi's quirk is that the main character is a professional wrestler who wants nothing more than to open a pet shop. But during his final match, he gets transported, say it with me, kids, to a generic fantasy world and is instructed that he is now the hero and it's his job to defeat all of the legendary monsters of the land. He takes this to be on the same level as killing the animals, though, and as a future pet shop owner, he takes quite a bit of offense to this. So now he still wants to have his pet shop, but he's in a world that doesn't know what that is, summoned by people who want him to hunt and kill monsters. So what does he do? He turns monsters into pets. This can only go well. Over time, he ends up accruing not only new monsters to help his menagerie, but also some happy helpers who also see a benefit in having a peaceful relationship between humans. Really, the interesting build to this series is seeing how our main character deals with and attempts to tame various fantastic beasts. I'd like to say that he does a better job than J.K. Rowling, and I probably would not be wrong in that assessment. Do with that information as you will. Show's recommended because of the cute doggo. Let's move on. Ascendance of a Bookworm. The quirk here is that you have a book-obsessed girl who ends up reincarnated into a world as a poor villager whose family has never seen a book in their life. Naturally, like her, your first thought might be, well, I'll just make my own books then, with blackjack, and the word that YouTube probably doesn't want me to say, but hasn't clarified its new rules about, appealing to children in videos yet. So I'm just gonna play it safe. The best way that I can describe this series is that it's like a budget Dr. Stone, but with all of the entertainment. Like Senku, our main character Mine keeps trying to use the technology of the new world to create books of her own making. Unlike Senku, she fails more often than she succeeds, and constantly needs to rely on her knowledge of other futuristic inventions to keep her bookmaking plans afloat. Making shampoo, for example, becomes a very quick priority. But she soldiers on, and like with Dr. Stone, she has a very entertaining way of explaining how various real-world things are made and how they can be manufactured with simpler tools and techniques. Or in some cases, she just experiences pure agonizing failure. You can't relate to her 100% of the time because she does seem to figure out how to do a bunch of things just when it's convenient to the plot, but at least she doesn't claim to be an expert in any field in which she is knowledgeable. She just happens to be better than most of the locals. There is still this underlying mystery around how or why Mine got reincarnated. What happened to the girl whose body she now inhabits, and why does she keep getting sick all of the time? So this pleasant double whammy of plot points is what makes the show a winner for me. May not be for everyone, but it's definitely the best isekai of this season, in my eyes. Sure, there are others I could have talked about, but does it really matter? Like, do we need to discuss the anime about Aqua 2.0? No, we don't. And so, that is it from me. There will be streaming links to the shows that I have talked about today down below, and most of them just so happen to be available from this video sponsor, Crunchyroll. So be sure to check them out and use the 14-day code TRIAL in the description, crunchyroll.com/glassreflection, should you acquire it. Lastly, a very special thank you to all of my patrons, without whom I would be unable to do what I do, so I am eternally grateful. Specifically though, as I like to do, I want to give particular shoutouts to patrons: Richard Bradley, Hector Montemayor, Sir Yamako, Ryfan Bonaparte, Rune Jacobson, and Calhoun Boy for being especially awesome. You guys are great. And until next time, ladies, gentlemen, and others, watch more anime and stay frosty.